I want to share my thoughts on something that people use in their home studios every single day, and that is an equalizer. There's a lot of opinions on the internet saying that you should probably only boost or you should probably only cut. And some people say, no, it's okay to boost if it's an analog EQ, and you should only cut with a digital EQ. But what I wanted to know, was there any logic behind any of these thoughts? And more importantly, is there any scientific fact about if one method is better than the other? Well, let's find out. Hey, what's going on? I'm Bobby Balo, the mixing and mastering engineer at Raytown Productions. I help music creators make better sounding music. I also run a Facebook community called the Home Studio Fast Track. So if you are looking to level up your music, be sure to stop by and network with some other music creators just like you. So in terms of EQ, boosting and cutting does exactly the same thing. So you can see in FabFilter, when we boost this signal, we see the same boost in Plugin Doctor, which is just basically reading out the signal. However, if we change it from frequency to phase, you can see that the phase of this boost is altered on either side of the frequency which our boost occurs at. Okay, so we're changing the phase above and below the filter frequency. So that if we do the opposite, we see a negative version of that. But they're exactly the same, and they're exactly the same anywhere you put it on the frequency spectrum. If we apply the same two filters in opposite directions, they perfectly cancel out the waveform. So it doesn't really matter. If boosting and cutting does exactly the same thing, why is there so much confusion about this? And I think this rumor started about 10 or 15 years ago when people would boost 10, 15, 20 dB in their digital audio workstation, and they started digitally clipping the software itself. Now, more recently, like in the last 10 years or so, a lot of the digital audio workstations like Cubase, Pro Tools, FL Studio, Reason, all those operate at least 32-bit processing, which means that we now have over 700 decibels of headroom in the positive direction. So essentially, you're never going to ever clip your digital audio workstation ever. So the question comes back to us, and that's if it's almost impossible to clip inside of your DAW, are there any real advantages to boosting or cutting? And the answer is not really, but that's only in terms of the audio. But I will argue that there's some other factors that go beyond just the audio that would warrant us choosing one over the other. So I think I have some very valid reasons why 95% of all of our EQ moves should be cuts and not boosts. And like I mentioned earlier, this has nothing to do with the manipulation of audio. It has everything to do with us being human beings. So the first reason is that we are hardwired to believe that if something sounds louder, it sounds better. So my argument is that if you're making a decision where you're using an EQ to cut frequencies away and it still sounds better, it actually is better for the song. However, it's so easy to fool ourselves into thinking that EQ boost is helping the song when most of the time it probably is just louder and not necessarily helping. So if you are someone who boosts in their EQ all the time, try to match the output volume to what it was before you had the EQ in it. So when you bypass it, you're only hearing the differences in the audio, and I'm willing to bet that boost probably doesn't sound better. So my second reason for choosing cuts over boosts actually has to deal with phase. Now, I'm well aware that linear phase EQs can solve some of these phase issues that I showed you. However, it comes with a whole bunch of other problems like pre-ringing, and that can really mess things up. So let's just forget about that for right now. Like I showed you earlier, anytime we take an EQ and we're boosting or cutting certain frequencies, we're altering the phase near the frequency that we're boosting or cutting. And that difference in phase can cause some weird EQ phasey stuff to happen around those frequencies. Now, if I asked you if you would prefer to have that weird stuff happening near parts of the songs that you wanted to make quieter, which would be an EQ cut, or if you would want the phasey weirdness to be more noticeable at the parts you're trying to make louder, which would be an EQ boost, which one would you pick? I think it's pretty obvious, right? We would want all the weird stuff happening around frequencies that we're trying to cut away because we don't want those there anyway. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't ever boost frequencies. There's plenty of times when it actually does sound very musical, and I do this all the time. But what I'm saying is that when we do decide to boost frequencies, let's make absolutely sure it's actually helping the song. And it isn't just something that sounds louder. And to help you on this mixing journey you're on, I've put together an ebook of all my favorite free plugins, and it includes a lot of awesome EQs that you can use on your songs. You can get that totally free. There's a link in the description. You do not want to miss that one. And if you know somebody that might benefit from watching this video, or you think they'd find it interesting, please share it with them. And if you don't want to miss a video when we release it every single week, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that thumbs up and let YouTube know this video was actually helpful. And as always, I want to thank you so much for your time and attention, and I hope to see you in the next video.